My name, Kenedi. I am originally from Mississauga, but I am in Hamilton now. I've been in Hamilton for the last 3 years. I'm in a band called Fight on Sight. We've been around for almost a year now, coming up on a year in October. And yeah, we've got an EP coming out soon in October. We're going to kind of line it up with the 1 year anniversary of us. So that's pretty cool.
And you do vocals, right?
I do, yeah. I am the vocalist in Fight on Sight. Yeah, I can't play any other instrument, so that works for me. So my main influences when I was growing up, my mom. My mom's a huge influence of mine. I'm basically her little mini-me kind of thing. She was a professional roller dancer at one point. She was a hairdresser, super strong woman, had 3 kids before she was 30, and just kind of like powered through all the time. She was a stay-at-home mom for a while, and then my dad decided he wanted to go back to school, so then she was like, fuck it, I'm gonna take on the workload, and she went back to work. Now she ran her own business, she did all this stuff, and now she's like the CFO of like 4 different companies, and she's just killing it right now. So yeah, no, huge influence from my mom. She's kind of given me the strength and stuff to be like a very strong, independent woman, which is like my entire vibe. So when I was like, I want to say probably 12-ish, a guy made me a mixed CD, so one of the ones like you would put in the computer and you would burn it onto the CD kind of thing, which is not a thing anymore. But he made me one of that, and it had some Mastodon songs on it, and I had never listened to heavy music before. I was listening to like rap and all that stuff when I was in like grade 6 and 7. So he made me that, and that kind of introduced me to that. And then one day, my mom, I guess she had heard me listening to like heavier music, and she went to HMV and she saw Black Dahlia Murder's Miasma, and she picked that up for me and she brought it home, and she was like, this was in the metal section, like I think you might like it. She didn't listen to it, doesn't have a clue about it, anything like that, but she was like, it looked like something you would like. So she gave it to me, and then that was on repeat for the next like 5 years of my life, and like any album they came out with, I was the biggest Black Dahlia Murder fan. It was so much. So the first concert I ever went to was, I think it was From First to Last, and pretty sure the Youves played, and what was that other band called? It started with an A. Somebody's gonna yell at me for not remembering it, but it was a band, long hair. Davey Havoc was the vocalist. AFI. Yeah, I think maybe them. Could be wrong, but it was definitely From First to Last. I was the biggest From First to Last fan. They were an emo, screamo band, long, swoopy hair, all of that stuff. That was my entire vibe. I was a huge scene kid as a teenager, and yeah, I went with a few of my friends, and my mom like dropped us off in Toronto and was like, you guys have to be safe. We like waited in line for forever. I know, I bought a t-shirt and I ended up getting it signed by the guitar player. I ended up selling it like years later for a ridiculous amount of money, but yeah, no, I just remember waiting in line and like singing the songs while we were waiting in line, and like just having like the huge spiky hair and like the red eye makeup and all of that, and just it's a weird memory. It's a weird memory, but that was my first show, and it was, I guess, first concert, I guess, because it was at a big place in Toronto. You can see it from the highway. I can't remember what it's called. It's
Rogers
like
Center. Skydo.
No.
Government?
Oh,
Maybe.
Warehouse, concert hall.
Possibly. I don't know. It kind of looked like it's like an old brick building, and it was like in a parking. I don't know. It was big though, and I don't even know if it's still a venue, but yeah. No, that was my first concert. One of my favorite shows I remember going to, I saw Madball and Comeback Kid at the Opera House in Toronto, and it was so busy. There were so many people, and I had gone with some people who I was kind of friends with but kind of not friends with. I was just kind of like I don't know. It was like back in the day, it was one of those things where like they were your friends to your face, but then like behind your back, they were always talking about you. So I wasn't super comfortable, but I was like, fuck it, I want to go anyways. And like I just remember being on the sidelines of the pit, just kind of watching everything, and it was going crazy. And then somebody threw a full can of beer at the back of my head. And the only thing I could think about was like how much money they just wasted. Because even then, like the Opera House beer prices were insane. Like now it's like, oh my god, it's like $13, $14, $15 to get a can of beer at the Opera House. And like I think it was maybe like $8. But back then that was still a lot of money for a beer somewhere. And they threw the whole thing at the back of my head and it just went everywhere. And I was like, that is such a waste of money. And I was kind of just more upset for them for wasting their beer than I was about getting hit with it. Because it was just so like, so strange and out of place. But that was a really good show. I think it was the first time I had seen Madball, which was wild because they've been around for forever. And then Comeback Kid was sick. And then another, I guess, one of my other favorite shows would be our band, like my band's first show. We opened for Buried Alive, which was huge because they've been around for so long, and it was one of those things where when we got the offer to do that, we still didn't know if we were going to be ready like for that time frame, and it was a little daunting. It was kind of one of those things where it's like somebody who's so prolific in hardcore, a band that's so prolific in hardcore, and that's who we're opening for, like, and he's notorious for showing up at the beginning and staying and watching all of the bands and everything, so it was kind of like this, like, you better be good, like, but the feeling of, like, I was so nervous when we got up on stage, and I was shaking, and like the entire time, like, sitting, like we did load in, and I sat and I was just running the lyrics over and over and over in my head because I was like, I'm gonna forget something. But everybody was like, even if you forget the lyrics, like, nobody knows your songs yet, so they're not gonna know that you've forgotten anything, so it's gonna be fine no matter what. But I remember being crazy nervous, and then I finally like got up on stage, and like we were like, okay, like, we're ready, it's go time. And then they started playing like the opening riff to our first song, and I just remember this like giant smile coming over my face, and I was like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna do this is amazing. Because I've always wanted to do it. Yeah, I've always wanted to do it, and like since I was a kid, and now I'm finally doing it. Like 13-year-old me is like, yeah. But yeah, I think that's like number one favorite show for me, because it was just so, like, such a weird feeling and being on the other side. But I really, really enjoyed myself. So yeah, good memory. So another one of my favorite shows would have to be, I guess, the entirety of Sound and Fury. Kyle and I went to Sound and Fury in California last year. It was probably the most expensive trip we've taken together. But it was definitely worth it. We got to see a lot of cool bands, like bands that I don't think I would ever see again. I mean, a few of them I actually have seen since then, which was weird. But like, we got to see Tsunami, saw Speed for the first time, which was very cool. I came back with a Speed hat, and people were very jealous because Speed hadn't come to Canada yet, so they couldn't get a hold of the merch, and if they did, it was like ridiculously expensive. I got to see Gate Creeper, who I've seen before, but I absolutely love Gate Creeper. I guess they're not really hardcore, but they fit the vibe. So that was really cool. And then we got to see, like, I think we saw Mind Force, Gridiron was there, God's Hate was cool. The only downside was it was unbelievably hot. I'm not used to that level of hot water or hot weather. Because it's like a dry heat there, whereas here is more like a humid heat. But there was a few days like we were like, oh yeah, we're just gonna like drink beers and hang out all day, but I think we had maybe like 3 beers the entire weekend because it was just so hot that we were like choosing water over beer, which is not very like us when it comes to going to stuff like that. I got a really weird burn on the back of my knees. I didn't even know you could burn the back of your knees, but I did that. But yeah, all in all, it was very cool experience. I loved being just like in a different country, a different state, like meeting a bunch of new people and like seeing how things are done in the States. Like the pits were violent, but it was really cool to watch. And like Kyle wore white shirts for some reason, and they were like red. Like the dirt there was like red, so his shirts were all stained dirt red. When we got home, I had to bleach them like 17 times to get it. Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, no, it was a very, very cool experience. Definitely something I'd like to do again, but it needs to be a little bit more affordable. So the craziest thing that I've ever seen happen at a show, I spent a while trying to figure out how to answer this because I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. I've been going to shows for almost 20 years now, so everything's just kind of become like one muddled memory. But I feel like just because I've been going to shows for so long, and I've seen it all. Like, I've seen people get knocked out and have to be taken out on stretchers. I've seen people have noses broken, like covered in blood, bones broken. I've seen people dropped on their heads from stage diving. I've seen like security guards knock people out, like all of this stuff. And so I think I'm just a little desensitized to it now, where it doesn't really faze me all that much. So what somebody else would, I guess, be like, oh my god, that dude's being pulled out on a stretcher, that's crazy. I'm just kind of like, I've already seen this. So yeah, I don't know, I don't really have anything off the top of my head. Like, and I mean, also, like, I grew up going to shows in Toronto and stuff like that, so there was always like the very eccentric homeless people waiting around after the shows, like asking people for money, and they were always like, wah, and like hurting people and stuff like that. So so yeah, I don't know. I can't really think of like the craziest thing I've ever seen. It's just all kind of like one big crazy mess all the time. But I think that's part of why I love going to shows so much, because it's just like, it's always crazy. So I don't have any past bands. This is my first band, Fight on Sight. It was one of those things where Fight on Sight had different members originally, and then there was some like lineup changes. Hillary and Tom, so the bass player and the drummer, are the two original members. They're husband and wife, so that's great. But they were the original members, and then they had Christian join the band because they didn't have a guitar player, and then the vocalist that they had ended up just not wanting to do it anymore. So I had been saying for a while, like, I want to do vocals in a band kind of thing, because like I said, I don't play any instruments. I don't really have any other talents other than yelling. So but yeah, so when they left, they reached out to me and they were like, do you want to join the band? And I was like, oh hell yeah, like, I'm in. I've never done anything like this before, but I've always wanted to, like, ever since I was a kid. Like, I would go to shows and stuff like that and see them on stage and be like, I want to do that. But there was never really, like, when I was growing up, there wasn't really a place for women in hardcore when you think about it. Like, it was kind of one of those things, like, I come from, like, the whole, like, no clit in the pit era and all that stuff. Like, there wasn't really, like, many women on stage in hardcore, and not many women in the pit at all. So having the opportunity to do this and, like, kind of be an influential figure in a sense to women in hardcore is like huge for me. And I know, like, 13-year-old me is like rooting me on, like, that's my biggest fan right there. But yeah, no, I as soon as they asked me, I was so ready to do it, because I wanted to be prevalent in hardcore, because it's just been a big part of my life for forever, and I wanted to kind of give back to the community that gave me so much growing up.
Awesome.
Yeah. So what I like the most about being a musician, I mean, I don't really consider myself a musician, I just yell. But it's the feeling that I get when I'm on stage, when I like are playing shows and stuff like that, like getting ready to get up on stage, doing all that stuff, and like even like the first few minutes of just like yelling at people like to move up and stuff like that, just kind of looking around and seeing everybody, and then like we play our first riff and everybody starts moving, and like it just gives me so much joy. I get this like rush, and I'm like, I'm ready to just fucking destroy everybody, and it's just like it's an amazing feeling, and it's something that like it's kind of like it's like a drug now. Like, I'm constantly chasing it. Like, we went to the show on Friday, and we're watching all the bands play and everything, and I'm just like sitting there like, I'm ready to play a show. I want to play now. And I know like we're playing one on Saturday, like the 10 for 10 in Toronto, and like that's a lot of bands, but it's like a bunch of our friends and stuff like that, and I'm really excited to do that, and like I can't wait for all the stuff we have in the future, because just, I don't know, I just want to play shows all the time. I mean, obviously I need some rest in between, but for the most part, if I could play shows like every 2 weeks, I think I would be very happy. And then, but the only thing like dislike, I guess, for being a musician, being in a band, is just kind of how busy I've become. Because like I work full time, and like I'm trying to go to the gym and take care of the house and the dogs and all of that stuff, but then I also have to fit in time to go to practice and actually like focus on that. And then there's like the days we take for writing, and then the days like we write the music, and then I have to take time to sit down and like write the lyrics and all of that stuff. And it just kind of didn't realize it was going to be so time consuming. I'm not like upset about that, because I am having fun while I'm doing it, but it's just one of those things where like I actually utilize the calendar in my phone now, which I never used to, because if I don't, I'll forget where I'm supposed to be and stuff like that. And like even with planning like out of town shows and stuff like that, having to book Airbnbs and get all of that done and make sure like I've got somebody to come watch the dogs and like do all of that, like it's just very a lot of energy and time goes into it. And it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is one of those things that I'm just kind of not used to at this point. So it does, like, I'm like, I don't like this, but I don't hate it. I just don't like it. So my favorite food, I'm not really sure if it counts as a food, but definitely beef jerky. I will, I mean, yeah, beer is also a good favorite food. I mean, I've got my fancy sour beer. Yeah, no, I think beef jerky would have to be my favorite food, if that would count as a food. There's like beef jerky, bacon jerky, I've had vegan jerky, any kind of jerky I'm a big fan of. I tried to make my own jerky once, that didn't really go very well, but yeah, no, if I have the opportunity to get some beef jerky or like a good pepperoni stick, that's where I'm at. Okay, so I guess the only useless talent I have, it's not really useless, it's definitely helpful, but it's weird. I am incredibly stubborn, and I won't leave any grocery bags in the car if I don't have to. So I will load up every space of my arms to get the groceries in the house, and I will, I've learned how to open the door with my feet. So I don't have to put anything down and start over. So that would be my useless talent, is opening doors with my feet, because I'm stubborn. I just want to say thank you to Steve and Stronger Than Ever Videos for like having me do this. It means a lot. This is, I think, my first interview I've done since I've been in a band, so it feels pretty cool. I'm kind of like really excited to do it. It's a new thing for me. But yeah, like thank you so much for having me. It means a lot. I appreciate it.
Cheers.